people were praying for Jim. And I really think that's what gave Jim an unusual courage. Jim just could feel the prayers. He was strong, courageous, loving to the end. I mean, we just hardly recognize our little boy. I mean, he was just a hero,
and
you know.
And you know from the videos, his last words were, "I wish I had more time to see my family."
The parents of Jim Foley, who was beheaded on tape by ISIS. I did want to get that in there. But in the time we have left with the panel, retired Major General and founder of Stand Up America, Paul E. Vallely, and LIGNET Chief Analyst Fred Fleitz, I want to make it clear that it might look like the ceasefire never happened, but that's because I want to make it clear that Hamas broke the ceasefire before it expired, firing rockets into Israel. Israel did what the U.S. isn't not doing here, and as Fred alluded to earlier, or maybe the general both did, Israel responded with many, many airstrikes overnight, including killing the military chief of Hamas, which, Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, that is a huge deal, is it not?
It's a significant deal, but I'm afraid that the Hamas leadership has lots of folks who can replace him.
Oh yeah, I understand that. Yeah, but you know, to get one of the leaders who usually are in hiding, usually in a different country, as a matter of fact,
that's right.
it's probably pretty rare and pretty significant. And General, here we are again. You know, Israel walked out of the talks for a permanent ceasefire or some kind of agreement because they won't negotiate under fire. And of course, rockets have been launched towards Tel Aviv. The Iron Shield Iron Dome had to come into play again. So although we're nowhere near where we were, talking about the number of attacks on both sides here, or the attacks from Hamas and the response by Israel, still in all, it's ongoing.
Well, it certainly is. That's why, Steve, I think I said it on your show, no ceasefire until Hamas is destroyed and taken out of business. It's just a game that they play with the press and with Israel, and it's got to be an effective operation to demilitarize them and make Hamas exist no more, just like ISIS.
Yeah, and of course, you know, we call for that on both fronts. Israel goes in with the stated purpose of doing something similar. But, you know, there was a Reuters reporter, Fred, who I saw online last night, took a tour with Hamas terrorists through one of the tunnels, kind of mocking the notion, as Israel put forth, that they, you know, have destroyed all the tunnels, and they obviously haven't.
I think that's right. I don't think Hamas is interested in a ceasefire. I believe this conflict will tail off like a similar one did in 2009 with a unilateral Israeli ceasefire. We wrote about this in LIGNET on Monday, and I would encourage our viewers to check out this story on lignet.com.
And General, this is something that Israel, I guess, will be willing to live with for the time being, the remaining tunnels and the remaining rockets?
They cannot afford to do it, Steve. They cannot afford to do it. They must do what's in Israel's best interest, just as any sovereign country must do. And so they have to have a strategy to neutralize, demilitarize Hamas and take them out of action. And if they don't, it's going to continue to go just as it has been, with no solution, no finality. Now, if you take Hamas out of the picture, then you can go to economically developing Gaza, just like they did before Arafat and the Intifada.
Absolutely. Guys, I appreciate it very much. Thank you both, Fred Fleitz and Major General Paul E. Vallely. Appreciate it. We'll be back, folks, with columnist and contributing editor of TheRoot.com, David Swerdlick, and columnist for Breitbart.com, C. Edmund Wright, after the break. But first, America's Moment takes a look back at Operation Nickelgrass.
On October 6, 1973, while the nation of Israel observed Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year for Jews, the combined military forces of Egypt and Syria launched a simultaneous and surprise attack on Israel's southern and northern borders. Within days, the Israeli army found itself in retreat, losing a third of its equipment and outnumbered by the enemy 3-1.
that he could not believe. He said, we cannot stop them.
Recognizing their very existence was at stake, President Nixon moved quickly to resupply our ally Israel and their besieged army. With an around-the-clock airlift of U.S. military support, the tide of battle shifted, and soon the Israeli armies were advancing into both Syria and Egypt, with Israeli General Ariel Sharon's tanks threatening Egypt's Third Army with annihilation. The Soviet Union, who were supporting the Arab armies, quickly called upon President Nixon to stop the Israelis' advance or risk a larger war. The president intervened, saved the Egyptian army, and then used the opportunity to convince Egypt's President Anwar Sadat to seek a peaceful solution to a conflict that had plagued the region for decades. You're watching An American Moment on Newsmax TV.